What if the reason you don't see your own attractiveness is because you've been looking at yourself through a distorted lens your entire life? You stand in front of the mirror and your eyes search for flaws. Too much here. Not enough there. You compare yourself to edited images, filtered faces, unrealistic standards. You measure your beauty by the amount of attention you receive, by how loudly someone compliments you, by how often someone chooses you. And when those things feel inconsistent, you quietly conclude that maybe you are just average. Maybe you are not the woman who turns heads. Maybe you are not the woman who leaves an impact. But here is the truth you were never taught. The most attractive women rarely feel attractive. Because real attractiveness is not loud. It is not desperate. It is not constantly checking for validation. It is calm. It is grounded. It is secure. And security is quiet. You underestimate yourself because you live inside your own skin. You see your bad days. You hear your doubts. You know your insecurities. But the world does not experience you that way. The world experiences your presence, your energy, your tone. The way you enter a room without trying too hard. The way you speak when you are not performing. The way you smile when you forget to be self-conscious. There is a psychological truth that changes everything. People are not drawn to perfection. They are drawn to authenticity. When you stop forcing, when you stop shrinking, when you stop overthinking every word, something powerful happens. You become real. And real is rare. Have you ever noticed how people remember small details about you? How conversations with you feel easy. How sometimes you catch someone looking at you, but when you look back, they quickly look away. You may dismiss it. You may think it means nothing, but it means everything. Highly attractive women often have one common blind spot. They don't realize the effect they have. You might think your calm nature is boring. Someone else sees it as peaceful. You might think your independence makes you less desirable. Someone else sees it as strength. You might think your focus on your goals makes you intimidating. Someone else sees it as inspiring. Attractiveness is not about being the loudest in the room. It is about having a presence that shifts the room without trying. It is about walking in without apologizing for existing. It is about speaking without seeking approval after every sentence. It is about being comfortable enough in your own skin that you do not need constant reassurance. And here is the reward for understanding this. When you realize that your power has been there all along, you stop chasing validation. You stop begging to be chosen. You start moving differently. You start carrying yourself differently. And the moment you do, your energy multiplies, because confidence is not built by someone telling you that you are attractive. It is built the moment you decide to believe that you are. Stay with this. Because once you see the signs clearly, you will never doubt yourself the same way again. And when a woman truly understands her value, she becomes unstoppable. And if you still doubt it, look at the evidence in your life. Pay attention to how people respond to you. Not the loud compliments, not the obvious flirting. Look deeper. Notice how quickly people open up in your presence, how conversations with you move past the surface without force, how someone who barely talks suddenly shares their fears, their dreams, their secrets with you. That is not random. That is emotional gravity. People are drawn to what feels safe. In a world where everyone is competing to be seen, heard, and validated, the rare woman who truly listens becomes magnetic. When you give someone your full attention, when you hold eye contact, when you respond with intention instead of distraction, you send a powerful psychological signal. You matter. And every human being is starving to feel that. You may think you are just being kind, just being normal. But your presence does something to people. It lowers their defenses. It allows them to breathe. It makes them feel understood without having to perform. And the way you make someone feel becomes the way they remember you. That is attraction at its core. It is not about being the most beautiful face in the room. It is about being the energy people replay in their minds long after you leave. If you often find that people sit closer to you in group settings, that they seek your opinion, that they look at you while speaking even when others are around, understand what that means. Their nervous systems feel regulated around you. Their minds associate you with comfort. Comfort builds connection. Connection builds desire. You might not notice it because you are not scanning for attention. You are simply existing. But others are scanning subconsciously. They notice your tone, your calm, your composure. They mirror your body language without realizing it. They adjust their posture. They soften their voice. Humans naturally mirror what they admire or feel safe with. If invitations seem to find you without you chasing them, if people ask for your advice even when you don't present yourself as an expert, if someone lingers in conversation a little longer than necessary, that is not coincidence. That is the pull of your presence. And here is the deeper truth. You don't have to try to be magnetic when you are emotionally available and grounded. You don't have to overtalk. You don't have to overshare. You don't have to prove anything. Your quiet confidence speaks louder than performance ever could. The more you realize that your value lies in how you make people feel, the more powerful you become. Because that kind of attractiveness cannot be copied with makeup, filtered with lighting, or faked with rehearsed charm. It is built through self-awareness, through empathy, through inner stability. So stop dismissing the subtle signs. Stop minimizing the way people respond to you. Stop assuming that because attention is not always loud, it is not there. You carry something rare. A presence that invites, a calm that reassures, a depth that intrigues. And once you fully understand that, you will no longer question whether you are attractive. You will move with the quiet certainty of a woman who knows she does need to convince anyone of her worth. And that certainty changes the way you tolerate the world. When you begin to understand your value, you stop accepting what drains you. You stop laughing at disrespect just to keep the peace. You stop shrinking your opinions to make others comfortable. Something inside you straightens, your posture shifts, your voice steadies. You no longer negotiate your standards just to avoid being alone. That is where another powerful sign reveals itself. You have boundaries, not loud, dramatic walls, not cold distance, but clear lines. Lines that say, this is how I deserve to be treated. Lines that say, I will not betray myself to keep you. Lines that say, my time, my energy, my body, and my peace are valuable. And do you know what boundaries communicate on a psychological level? Scarcity, value, self-respect. When you're not available for everything, you become more desirable. When you do not respond instantly to every call for attention, your attention gains weight. When you can walk away from what does not align with you, even if it hurts, you radiate strength. And strength is deeply attractive. Many women are taught that being liked is the goal. So they overgive, they over-explain, they over-compromise. But the woman who knows her worth does not beg to be understood. She states her truth calmly. If someone cannot meet her there, she does not collapse, she adjusts her access. If you have ever been called intimidating, difficult, or too much, simply because you refuse to lower your standards, understand what that really means. It means you are not easily manipulated. It means you require depth. It means you see your own value clearly enough to protect it. That protection creates mystery, and mystery fuels attraction. When you do not reveal everything at once, when you do not chase, when you allow people to earn closeness instead of handing it out freely, you shift the dynamic. You become the chooser, not the one waiting to be chosen. That energy is powerful. It signals emotional stability. It signals confidence. It signals that you would rather stand alone in your truth than sit in company that disrespects you. And here is what makes it even more attractive. You do it without cruelty, without chaos, without needing to announce it. Your standards are quiet but firm. Your no is calm but final. Your silence is not weakness. It is discernment. People feel that. They feel that you are not desperate for approval. They feel that you are not chasing validation. They feel that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. And the human mind assigns higher value to what is not easily obtained. So if you have lost people because you would not settle, that is not proof that you are undesirable. It is proof that you are selective. If you have walked away from situations that looked good on the surface but felt wrong in your spirit, that is not overthinking. That is alignment. Highly attractive women do not lower their standards to increase their options. They raise their standards to refine their options. And when you begin to live from that place fully, you stop questioning whether you are enough. You start asking whether what surrounds you is worthy of you. And the moment you start asking whether what surrounds you is worthy of you, something shifts in the room. You begin to notice reactions you once ignored. Subtle tension, unexpected competition, unnecessary criticism, energy that feels slightly defensive when you have done nothing wrong. That is not your imagination, that is impact. When a woman stands firmly in her standards, she becomes a mirror. And mirrors are uncomfortable for people who are not ready to see themselves clearly. Your confidence, even when quiet, highlights insecurity in others. Your discipline exposes inconsistency. Your self-respect challenges those who are used to settling. Without saying a word, you raise the bar. And when the bar rises, people either grow or they resist. If you have ever felt like someone was competing with you for no clear reason, pay attention. If you have noticed someone copying your style, your tone, your ideas, your mannerisms, that is not coincidence. If you have sensed subtle rivalry in spaces where you were simply existing, that is information. Comparison is rarely triggered by someone who feels small. It is triggered by someone who feels significant. Psychologically, people compare themselves upward. They measure against those they perceive as strong, attractive, capable, or desirable. So when your presence sparks comparison, it means you represent something aspirational, You embody a quality they recognize as valuable. You may not see yourself as extraordinary. You may feel like you are just living your life, working on yourself, minding your business. But your composure speaks. Your growth speaks. Your calm speaks. And sometimes, instead of admiration being expressed openly, it shows up as competition. Do not shrink because of that. Do not dim your standards to make others comfortable. Do not soften your ambition to avoid being labeled intimidating. Your light is not the problem. The discomfort it triggers in others is not your responsibility. Highly attractive women often carry a quiet authority. They walk into a space and the dynamic shifts slightly. Attention adjusts. Energy recalibrates, not because they demand it, but because presence commands it naturally. If conversations pause when you begin to speak, if your opinion carries weight even when you say little, if your absence changes the atmosphere, that is influence. And influence is attractive. You do not have to announce your value when it is already being felt. Understand this deeply. The reactions around you are feedback. If your growth inspires some and unsettles others, you are operating at a level that cannot be ignored. If your boundaries make some step up and others step away, you are filtering with precision. And the more you refuse to apologize for your evolution, the more powerful your presence becomes. Attractiveness is not only about being desired. It is about being respected. It is about being observed. It is about being felt. And when your existence alone shifts behavior, sparks comparison, and commands subtle attention, that is not by accident. That is power you have finally stopped hiding. That power becomes even more undeniable in the moments when you are alone. Because the truest measure of attractiveness is not how you shine in a crowd. It is how you carry yourself when no one is watching. It is how you feel about your own company. It is whether silence feels peaceful or unbearable. If you can sit alone without reaching for constant distraction, that is strength. If you can spend time with yourself without feeling incomplete, that is security. And security is magnetic. Desperation repels. Wholeness attracts. When you do not need constant reassurance, your energy changes. When you are not anxiously waiting for a text, not obsessively checking for attention, not chasing validation, you radiate calm. And calm feels powerful. People are drawn to stability because it feels safe. If you rarely double text out of panic, if you do not rearrange your entire schedule to accommodate someone who has not earned that privilege, if you can enjoy your own plans without needing someone to fill the space, that communicates abundance. Abundance is attractive because it signals choice. You are not with someone because you fear being alone. You are with someone because you choose them. That subtle difference transforms the dynamic. When someone senses that you are complete on your own, they recognize that access to you is earned, not assumed. There is a quiet confidence in a woman who can walk into a restaurant alone, who can travel alone, who can invest in her goals without waiting for permission or companionship. That independence does not scream for attention, it commands respect. And respect deepens attraction. When you operate from fullness instead of lack, your standards remain steady. You do not tolerate inconsistency because you are not afraid of solitude. You do not cling to what is fading because you trust your ability to rebuild. That trust in yourself is powerful. Highly attractive women are not emotionally chaotic. They feel deeply, yes. They care, yes. But they do not collapse at the first sign of distance. They observe. They assess. They respond with intention. If people have ever described you as grounded, hard to shake, or slightly mysterious because you do not overreact, understand what that means. It means your emotional center is strong. And emotional strength is rare. You may have questioned yourself during quiet nights. You may have wondered if being independent makes you harder to love. But the truth is the opposite. Your independence filters out those who seek control and attracts those who seek partnership. You are not unapproachable. You are self-contained. And there is something deeply compelling about a woman who enjoys her own mind, her own goals, her own rhythm. Someone who can build happiness internally instead of borrowing it externally. The more you embrace that solitude as power, rather than loneliness, the more your energy shifts. You stop chasing. You start choosing. You stop fearing absence. You start valuing presence. And when a woman chooses from strength instead of fear, she becomes unforgettable. And when a woman chooses from strength instead of fear, growth becomes her natural rhythm. You do not stay the same. You refuse to stay the same. There is something deeply attractive about a woman who is evolving in real time. Not for applause, not for competition, but because she refuses to live beneath her potential. You read. You reflect. You question your patterns. You correct yourself. You learn from your mistakes instead of being defined by them. That kind of self-awareness transforms your entire presence. Growth radiates. When you commit to improving your mind, your body, your emotional intelligence, your discipline, You send a powerful signal to the world. You are invested in yourself. And what a woman invests in, she elevates. People can feel it when you are not stagnant. They see it in the way you speak with more clarity than you did a year ago. They sense it in your boundaries becoming sharper. They notice it in your posture, your energy, your focus. Even if they cannot explain it, they recognize the shift. Progress is magnetic because it represents potential. Attraction is not only about who you are today, it is about who you are becoming. When someone looks at you and sees ambition, resilience, curiosity, and depth, they see a future unfolding. And human beings are naturally drawn to potential. It excites them. It inspires them. It challenges them. If old acquaintances are surprised by how much you have changed, that is not arrogance. That is evolution. If opportunities begin appearing as you level up your habits, that is alignment. When you raise your standards internally, your external world begins to respond. Highly attractive women treat themselves like long-term investments. They do not wait for someone to rescue them or define them. They build themselves, skill by skill, habit by habit, thought by thought. You hold yourself accountable. You admit when you are wrong. You adjust instead of blaming. That emotional maturity adds weight to your words. It adds credibility to your confidence. It creates depth in your conversations. Surface beauty may capture attention for a moment. Depth sustains it. When you challenge yourself, physically, mentally, emotionally, you sharpen your energy. Discipline shapes your body language. Awareness shapes your tone. Reflection shapes your reactions. All of this compounds. All of this strengthens your presence. You may feel like you are simply doing the work quietly. Waking up early. Setting goals. Healing old wounds. Breaking patterns. But that quiet work creates visible results. And those results amplify your attractiveness in ways that no cosmetic enhancement ever could. There is something captivating about a woman who is clearly in motion, a woman who refuses to shrink back into old versions of herself, a woman who grows through pain instead of hardening because of it. The more you commit to becoming better, not perfect but better, the more your confidence stabilizes. And stable confidence is irresistible because it is earned. And when your beauty is backed by growth, discipline, and self-respect, it no longer depends on anyone else's approval. It becomes undeniable. And when your beauty is backed by growth, discipline, and self-respect, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing attention. You no longer dress, speak, or move for approval. You no longer calculate every action based on how it will be perceived. You no longer measure your worth by who is watching. You begin to live in alignment instead of performance. And that shift is magnetic. There is a paradox in human psychology. The less you need validation, the more you receive it. The less you try to impress, the more impressive you become. When you detach from the hunger to be seen, you become impossible to ignore because authenticity cannot be faked. If you laugh freely without scanning the room for reactions, that is confidence. If you express your thoughts calmly without fearing disagreement, that is security. If you pursue your goals without broadcasting every move for applause, that is power. People feel the difference between someone who is performing and someone who is aligned. Performance seeks approval, alignment radiates certainty, and certainty draws attention effortlessly. You may have noticed that compliments often come when you least expect them. Attraction often appears when you are focused on something else. Interest often grows when you are busy building your own life. That is not coincidence. That is the energy of non-attachment. When you are not desperate to be chosen, you become selective. When you are not thirsty for validation, your presence feels refreshing. When you are not competing for attention, your calm stands out in a world of noise. Highly attractive women do not center their identity around being admired. They center their identity around being authentic. They ask themselves, does this align with who I am becoming? Not, will this make me more liked? And alignment creates consistency. Consistency builds trust. Trust deepens admiration. If someone has ever confessed feelings you did not see coming, it is likely because you were simply being yourself. If someone has quietly observed you for months before approaching, it is because your presence created intrigue without effort. Mystery is not about hiding. It is about not oversharing your value. You do not reveal everything at once. You do not seek constant reassurance. You do not chase those who hesitate. That restraint increases your perceived value. The human mind naturally assigns greater worth to what is not easily accessible. But this is not about manipulation. It is about wholeness. You are not playing hard to get. You are simply hard to shake. You are not withholding to create desire. You are grounded enough not to overextend yourself. And that grounded energy feels rare. The final truth is this: the most attractive woman in the room is often the one who is least concerned with being the most attractive woman in the room. She is present. She is engaged. She is focused on purpose. She is comfortable in her skin. And when you fully embrace that state, you stop questioning whether you are enough. You start walking like you know you are. And that quiet, unwavering certainty transforms everything. And that quiet, unwavering certainty transforms the way you see yourself. Because once you recognize these signs within you, doubt begins to lose its grip. You stop arguing with your reflection. You stop negotiating with your insecurities. You stop shrinking in spaces where you were meant to expand. You begin to understand that attractiveness was never a competition. It was a reflection of alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions, between your standards and your behavior, between your inner world and your outer presence. When those things match, you glow differently. You no longer need constant reassurance because you have evidence. Evidence in the way people respond to you. Evidence in the way your standards filter out chaos. Evidence in the way your independence creates respect. Evidence in the way your growth shifts environments. Evidence in the way attention finds you when you are not chasing it. This is not ego. This is awareness. And awareness is power. The woman who knows her value does not become arrogant. She becomes selective. She becomes intentional. She becomes calm in situations that once made her anxious. She no longer begs for clarity. She observes behavior and decides. She no longer fears losing people who cannot meet her standards. She fears losing herself. That shift changes everything. When you internalize your worth, you move differently. Your walk becomes steady. Your voice becomes grounded. Your eye contact becomes direct. You stop over-explaining. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop diluting your opinions to make them easier to swallow. You begin to trust that the right people will align with your frequency. And here is the deeper transformation. The more you embrace your attractiveness as a byproduct of your character, the less fragile it becomes. It is no longer dependent on trends. It is no longer dependent on someone choosing you. It is no longer shaken by temporary rejection. It becomes internal. Internal value cannot be taken. It cannot be copied. It cannot be replaced. You realize that your presence alone carries weight. Your silence can speak. Your boundaries can teach. Your energy can influence. Your growth can inspire. Your calm can regulate chaos around you. That is real beauty. And when you finally see it clearly, you stop chasing environments that do not recognize it. You stop entertaining conversations that drain it. You stop tolerating dynamics that diminish it. You protect it. Because now you understand that you are not just attractive in appearance, you are attractive in mindset, in discipline, in emotional intelligence, in standards, in dependence, in growth, in authenticity. You are attractive because you are aligned. And the woman who is aligned with herself becomes unstoppable. Not because she demands attention, but because she commands respect.